Hey everybody, my name's Talentoth, and I'll be showing you the program UVLayout from Hedis. So to start UVLayout, you can either double click on it like any other program, and it'll come up with its main menu toolbar here, but then you have to go navigate and find your OBJ file that you want to unwrap through its browser here, which kind of sucks. So a better way to do it is to grab your OBJ file that you want to unwrap and just drag it onto the icon, and it'll automatically find everything for you. And when you're bringing an object into UVLayout, you have two options here for the UVs on it. You can either edit existing ones or create new ones for your mesh. But if your mesh doesn't have any UVs to begin with, it doesn't matter which option you pick. You can make it a sub-D mesh, which will subdivide it once, but it doesn't really work that well. There's a few options here to clean up your UVs if they come in funny when you're trying to edit them, but I haven't had to use them yet in any of my meshes that I've unwrapped with UVLayout. So I'm just going to go ahead and load this, and if it's your first time using UVLayout, your display options will probably come up with the Z axis as the up axis. If you're coming from 3D Studio Max into UVLayout, that will be the correct axis for your object, but if you're coming from Maya or Softimage, the Y axis is the up axis. So that's kind of the first thing you need to go fix before you start actually working on it. The controls for your 3D view here are you left click to rotate, middle click to pan it, and then right click to zoom it in and out. UVLayout features three different view modes. There's the 3D edit mode, which I'm in right now. There's the 3D view mode, and then there's the UV or the 2D view mode. You can get to those either by going to this display panel or by pressing the number 1, number 2, and number 3 keys on your keyboard. All of these panels can either be clicked on, you can click on their name and they'll just pop out, or you can click on an arrow and move a little window off wherever you want. I usually just pop a window off. And so UVLayout is it's a really good program to do UVs in. Obviously, that's the only thing it does. It does like a kind of like a pelt mapping unwrap, but it's kind of interactive. You can see what it does when it unwraps, and there's a few tools that you can use that make it quite a bit easier. And when you're unwrapping your model in UVLayout, you basically just pick where you want your seams to be, and then all the rest of the work is done in the 2D edit mode. So I'm going to start off in the 3D edit mode. So the number 2 on your keyboard. I'm just going to resize this quick, and I'm going to start deciding where I want my seams for this head. This head is just a model that I did in school, and it's my own personal one, so I don't have to get permission to do it or to use it in a video or anything. And so the topology is kind of meh in some places, but it will work good for this demonstration. So when you're in this 2D or when you're in the 3D edit mode, your basic buttons that you're going to use are C and W. So if you hold your cursor over top of an edge and you press C, that'll indicate a cut line, and you'll notice the edge that I held it over was red when I pressed C, and these ones are yellow. The yellow lines are just continuations of that edge. They try and find like an edge loop around the model, like if I hit that one. And actually, before I go any further, I want to turn on symmetry on this model. So if you have any models that are symmetrical down the center of the mesh, you can just hit find symmetry, and a little dialog will come up at the bottom, and then you can just click your middle edge and then hit space to continue. And you'll notice that one half goes darker than the other half, and that tells you that your model's now in symmetry mode. So I'm just going to start deciding where my edges should be, and I want to cut off the back of this ear and probably the inside of it too, but my view is kind of obscured by this ear. So there's two things we can do. We can either go into the display and adjust this X-ray mode, which just makes your model kind of see-through, and let's just turn it off all the way. It goes to wireframe. So I could just go and cut from here up, or if you don't want to use that, you can use there's a hide tool and a mark polygon tool. Your mark polygon tool is G. If you hold, I'll just cancel it. If you hold your cursor over a polygon, hit G, it marks it green. That's how I remember it. So G for green to mark your polygons. So if you want to unmark polygons, you can hold down Shift and then hit G over top of them. Just drag your mouse around. If you double tap G, it selects everything. If you double Shift tap or hold down Shift and double tap G, it deselects everything. If you hit G when your cursor is not on your mesh, it brings up a dialog box and shows you all the options for it. So you can grow this selection size of it, or you can just grow your selection. So if I just hit one of that and then go back to that dialog and then just hit the plus, you'll see your selection will grow. Then I could deselect this outside stuff, or I could turn up my brush size. Turn it back down to 1. Let's deselect all that stuff. I'll just do it in the X-ray mode. Right. And then if I wanted to hide this, use the H button. So use H if you just cancel that. Yeah, it brings up a dialog box every time. So you can left click and drag, it'll hide what polygons are underneath of your selection box when you drag it out. To unhide everything is U. It's funny, it comes up as undo. Or you can hide the marked one, which is G. So if you hit H and then G, it'll hide all the green ones. Which will actually work. If I can pick this edge. And then I'm just going to unhide that, and then deselect all that. Actually, I want to change that. A little bit more. Yeah, I'll go to wireframe mode. So cut that one back up, join that up. And then there we go. Okay. So you notice I have an entire section here that is marked to be cut off, and once you determine your seams, or you determine a seam and you want to split it or chop it off of your model to make it a separate shell, you can just hit the enter button. I'm going to turn that back up. So you notice the model moved, and when you're in your 3D edit mode, if you hold down space and then middle click, you can drag your shells around that are in here. You'll notice that I did it in symmetry since I have symmetrize on, or the symmetry mode on. These two pieces are ready to drop down into the 2D mode. So you hold your cursor over top of a shell that you want to drop into 2D mode and hit D for drop. Basically, all the buttons you're going to use in this 3D mode are C, W, G, H, D, and that's pretty much all of them. And enter, actually, to split your stuff. So we're going to cut this back up there. Oh yeah, W is to weld back together, if I didn't say that already. So cut, and you'll go up from there. Cut welds. And then cut from the chin down to there. Enter to split it off. You guys are good. And those eyes okay. I'll just cut off those. Oops. Oops. I didn't want that loop. I wanted the inside one. And sometimes it's a little bit funny how it decides where it wants to place its cut loops when you mark them. So you just have to watch what it does. There we go. Right, and then the inside of this ear too is way too, well, it depends what you want to do for it, but you'd never see this. So, well, like I said, I did this when I was in school, so I kind of went to town with it. And just so my ear kind of unfolds. Not a huge mess. I'm just gonna mark all this stuff in green that I want to pop off. Oh, crap. And yeah, that'll work good enough. And I want to put a I can put cuts in that when it's in 2D mode. So it looks like it's where I want all my seams to be. So this just pops you into 3D mode once you're done making all your seams, and you just press number 1 to get into 2D mode, and you'll see all your pieces are kind of in 2D mode. And this is your UV box. If you want to have it auto fit all your pieces, you can just click the auto fit, or you can just go turn that off. Usually you do that after everything's flattened. So now you need to flatten all of your parts. There's a couple different tools to use with this. You can just hit the F key and then drag a flatten box, blink, and you'll see everything turns into colors. We want everything to look like this green, this kind of light green color. If you have a bunch of bits, it's good to do the flatten box over top of everything, and then you can just hit this optimize, run for however many minutes you want. You can change your map resolution. If you want to lock a piece off, you hit L over top of it, and it'll make it so it doesn't get optimized. But If you just hit this, it'll go and try and flatten out every piece. But for the most part, you'll be using the F key. So if you hold down the F key over top of a shell, it'll flatten it and try and optimize it to the best it can, so it has the least amount of distortion on the UVs. So this piece looks pretty good, and here's its symmetrical other half. It doesn't update from one half to the other until you hit S over top of a shell. So notice that just updated that one when I hit S. That works fine. So this face, I'm going to want to hit Shift F over top of it, and it'll try and stretch it out onto an oval, and then you hit space, and then it does its optimizations automatically for you. And that's not really moving anymore, so I'm just going to hit space to stop it and see what's going on. So I have some overlap in the ear section. If I could. Yeah, so all these green edges are outer edges. Right now I just used the T to make a webbing. If you have any holes in your mesh that you want to have them stay the same, like as close to the same 3D shape or shape in 3D and 2D as they are in 3D, however you say that, you can just hit the T button while your cursor's over top of any outer edge, and it'll do that. If you hit Shift T, it does the whole entire outer edge, which for some things would be good, like that piece, but not for other things. So for example, this mouthpiece, I will want to. That inside of that mouth is going to give me problems. So if I have a piece that I want to chop off after it's dropped down into 2D, you can hit Shift D and it'll undrop it. And then if you go back to your 3D edit mode, just number 2 on the keyboard, you can go back in and make some changes to your cut lines. So if I wanted to cut that off, you can either mark it with your lines, or you can mark it with the G button. G will be easier in this case. I'll G that. That's a separate piece now. But I still need to make a cut along the edge. I'll drop that face out of my way. Sweet. Now those are two separate pieces. And let's just hit Shift F on this thing again and wait for it for a bit. And if you want to go make some more changes to your thing, but you don't want to lose your unfold that you've already done, you can hit the number 3 key and see. This is the 3D view mode. You can go in here and mark edges and mark faces. And like for example, if I wanted to make the lips separate, you could just mark all the faces, and then go back to the 2D edit mode and hit enter over top of the lips. But I don't want to do that, so I'll undo that. Let's see. You can see I've webbing on the eyes now and on the lips. So, when your stuff's unfolding here, it's colorized by green, red, and blue. Red means your polygons are getting squished, blue means they're getting stretched, and green means they're flat without any distortion. So you want everything to be this light green color. So you'll notice, like on this, my nose is getting squished, and if you look at your number 3 view, your 3D view, um, you can see where the problem areas on your mesh are. You can also hit T to change its texture, and you can see like the nose is kind of stretched out there, has a little bit of distortion. So, but everything else isn't too bad. Yeah, everything else actually looks pretty good except for just the nose area. So you can go back to the number 1 key, and on your keyboard, if you hit 4 and 5, it will either scale out your polygons or scale them in. So if you hit 4, it scales them out, and it starts to go nuts if you just hold it down for too long. If you hit 5, it scales them in, and then when you do your flatten, it'll try and keep them at those scales. And then if you want to revert them back to default, you hit 4 and 5 at the same time, and it's kind of like a heel brush kind of thing. I'm just going to let that go back to normal. And then if you hit the plus and minus key, it'll change the shape of your, or the size of your brush. And if you want to locally relax or locally flatten any areas, you hit the B button. That's all your kind of brush things. So I'm just going to scale out this nose a tiny bit with the 4 key, and then hold down F so it flattens out the entire mesh. And go see how that looks now. That looks a little bit better, so we might do it a little bit more. That's still just the tip of that nose. So if you want to go in and edit individual points, you hold down Control and middle click, and you can start dragging points around if you want, and it'll show you its distortion on there too. I don't think I'm going to get it much better unless I pull it out a bit. Oops. And then if you want to symmetrize the one half to the other one, you just hit S on your part again, and it does it for you. That piece is going to go back in. Go like this and kind of, oops. There we go. The inside of the nose doesn't need any space really. That's getting better. And I have some overlap right here. I'm gonna kind of take that back a bit. I'd rather not have overlap. I'd rather have some stretching than overlap. Get that out a bit. bleh. So yeah, I'm just going to turn the webbing off on this part. Just hit Shift T. That looks like it'll get a little bit better. Let's see. So that's getting better up in the nose kind of area. So really, if you're doing just organic type of stuff, you don't really need to know that many tools in the 2D edit view. But if you want to start getting into doing your hard body or your environment stuff or whatever, the other tools are really helpful. Oops, nope. There we go. Okay, so this face unwrap is actually not too bad right now. If I wanted to go in and tweak it further, I'd just use those same tools that I was using before. And maybe puff that out a tiny bit. Or put a webbing on there and see if I can get that a little bit better. But yeah, that's just the basics of doing an unwrap, and it's really quick. It's a lot better than doing it manually, and you can see what you've done. So if there's parts in your when you're doing your stuff in your 2D, if you want to weld some parts back together, you can. You can just hit W and then enter, and they'll weld back together, so you can get rid of seams that way. It's pretty good. And then, right, if you want to move around objects in here, you hold down space and middle click to move them just like in the 3D view. Space left click will rotate them, and space right click will scale them, but I never really scale stuff in here. And then once you're ready to export your stuff, you can just go to this pack menu and hit pack all, and it will pack everything into a box as best that it can. If you want it to be able to rotate, you just click this rotate button, and then it'll rotate your shapes 90 degrees and try and get the best pack job that it can. If you go in after manually, you can almost always get better results, but this is a good baseline to start from, and it can even show you how much coverage you have. So I'm only using 50% of my texture space right now for my textures, which isn't that great, but it works. And then if you're doing stuff manually, this is when you turn on your auto fit. So it'll automatically make your texture space square, depending on where the outer points of your objects are, or the outer points of your shells. Yeah. So when you're ready to export, another thing that would be useful to know is if you want to rotate your stuff, make it 90 degrees, you can just hit, helps if you select an object first. You can select objects just by clicking on them, and if you want to deselect, you just click off. So yeah, once you're ready to export, you can go to save and then just save it as whatever OBJ file you want, and then you're pretty much done. Save. So yeah, if you're doing organic shapes and stuff like that, there's not a whole lot to it. And I'm going to show you a gun now that I did. So hit load. And this is This is where UVLayout gets a little bit better than like soft images, unwrap, or the pelt mapper in 3D Max, whatever Maya has. So I'm just going to start pulling apart my gun and show you all the different pieces to it. So a few cylinders, a couple of these little bits. I can just drop them down immediately because I don't need to make any cuts on them. Drop that. Bullet to the top of a thing. Hammer, 2 grips. So these grips don't really... Actually, I'll split the corners on them. Hold that. Split. Drop that. Yeah, you can't... Oh. So undo that. Let's see if this works now. Previously they were talking about adding symmetry to mirrored objects that weren't the same object, and I'll undrop that or reset it by hitting Shift D on it. Now let's see if it works. Haha! Yeah, so if you want to find 2 separate objects, you have to find an edge and then find the pair of it. So you left click to find your initial edge, and then middle click to find the other corresponding edge on the other object, and then hit space to continue on. So you can symmetrize separate objects even that have the same topology. So I'm just going to split my 90-degree edges on here. Weld that back up. Shift S can also split things. It got changed later to enter to do it as well. So I'm just going to do these quick. Okay, green. Drop that, cut that, split. And hold that. So I kind of like doing that, so you just leave like one edge attached, so you know what corresponds to that. And then I need to split it down this edge as well. Weld, split, drop. Oops. Drop that. And I'm not even going to bother with that one. I'll split that apart. That's a funny little piece. So pop those off, drop them. I can split them when they're in the 2D mode. Yeah, we'll see what that does when it tries to unfold. So it's at the barrel, seam along the bottom. Drop that. Let's take the top off and drop the rest of it. Might need to chop that off later. Yeah, I'm going to redo this one. There we go. That a bit bigger. Cool. That can get dropped. I need to split this one a little bit. Split, split, split. Drop. Oh, I have a back on this one. That's funny. Drop that. And those are two separate pieces too. And these things don't really be seen when they're textured at all. So split all those. This one will be like that. Split that. There we go, that works better. So green that up. Drop. Cut. I'm least likely to see the front of it, because if you do like reload animation, you usually see the back of the clip. So I'll just split that off. Oops. I'll hit enter first to detach it, and then enter again to split it. That one should be good to go. Do this top. And to the bottom. Oops. So take the bottom off and then, whoops. I actually just want to split the sides on that. There we go. And then, oh, this trigger piece. I'll just do it two sides. And now it's just this part of the gun. So I have this funny little square on the back here. I don't know why I put it on there. But I'm just going to, oops. Actually, it'd probably even be easier just to do this. Yeah, that worked pretty good. So I split that like that. Sweet. Actually, split that. Drop that. And I'm just going to take this top off too. Wait a second. There. It's kind of odd. Oh, there we go. There we go. Pop that off. This interior of that will also get cut. And I'll put the seam on the back there. Drop. Split that off. Split that. We'll see how that unfolds. So now I have everything in my 2D view. Like I said before, if you just hit F, you can do a flattened box, which will convert everything to being flattened, and then you can run this optimize. So just crank it up for 5 minutes, and it'll go through all the pieces and try and flatten it as best as it can. And then if a piece doesn't change, it'll just start skipping that piece. So it just focuses on the pieces that need to be changed. But see, there's a few pieces in here I need to stretch out before flattening them. So, I'm just going to do that. Just Shift F. We'll stretch them out through this thing. That's that bullet. And I'm actually going to cut these off and then weld them back on. So I'm going to weld that back on there. And do it on the bottom. Actually, no, I'm just going to have them separate. I can figure it out what's what in the UVs. So, yeah. Into that one. That one's a bit better. What was that piece? Oh, okay. So, split that. Oops. Drop it. So you'll notice, like, a lot of these parts will go kind of goofy. I'll import that. But there are tools to fix that. Oh, what piece is that on? Okay, so now I'm just going to run this for a bit. There's a couple in there. So I'm just going to stop this and run a quick pack. Stop. Without rotate on. Pack all. Go find it. So there are a few pieces that are. This one's folded up. This one's folded up. That one is. That one is. Cut that off from the back there. That one needs some time. Oops. So everything is just unwrapping really, really even. Whoops. Run for. That's what it was. And you notice up here there's the optimized number. So I have like once a piece is optimized as this thing says it can be, it adds it to the list, and then it just skips it next time it goes around, and it just keeps cycling through. Right, that's what I was doing. I was pulling these out. That's better. Yeah, sometimes stuff gets folded over if you just try and flatten them straight off the bat, so you need to hit Shift F on them first to pull them out, and then flatten them down. Okay. Oh yeah. Whoops. What was it? Yeah, so this thing's like all Gumby. Weld that back together. So there are a bunch of tools in UVLayout to do like hard body and straight objects. Just the way that their folder, their flattening algorithm is, you'll get a lot of like funny angles or weird shapes or whatever when you don't want them. And so I'm just going to go through and fix a bunch of this stuff. And so like the first thing is if you want to straighten any of your shells, if you hold your cursor over a edge and hold down Control and then press on the arrow pad, like the arrow keys below the page down, page up kind of thing. If you go up, down, it aligns them, or left, right. It aligns that edge to that axis that you're pointing down. And then it's actually pretty straight, but it could be perfectly straight. Control I. Yeah. So if you want to make sure all of your, or if you want to align an edge to a horizontal or vertical axis, you can just hold your cursor over it and press I, and then, oh, that makes it straight with itself. I lied. I think it's L or K. There it is. It's not K. Yeah, there you go. It's working on the outer edge. Yeah, so I, that's what I said first. I is the one that aligns it to an axis. So if you want to like have it perfectly horizontal, which is a bullet, which actually that looks good. If you hit Control I, or if you just want to mark individual edges, you press I. But if you hit Control I, it does all the edges that are similar to it. So if I want it to be like that, it should just go perfectly square, which does it really well. If you just go vertically, it can still move. Well, it would be horizontally, I guess, but it can. All your other edges can still move vertically when you go to flatten them. Or you can just mark individual edges just by pressing down I and drawing on them. And so now, let's see if that works. Yeah, so your middle edge should then stay, or at least try and go as straight vertically as it can, and then all the rest of it will follow. So I'm just going to take that off and then go that way because I liked that. Sweet. I'll chop those off and then just align that. That's as flat as it can get. Anyway. Oh, maybe not. Yeah. That thing was all garbled up. It should fix itself with enough time. There we go. Just give it a little bit of help. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is just straight stuff. I'm going to run this again. So things said it was pretty good. And everything's pretty much distortion free. These pieces all want to do the eye on it, or the eye key. And just those will straighten out. If I really wanted to save space, I'd chop these off and just seam them later, or they're so small that they shouldn't matter on this model. Yeah, I don't want to make the outer edges on this one straight. And so now, if you have another edge that's not that you want to have straight, but not vertically or horizontally, you can hit the K button on it. That's what that one does. So even if I wanted to, like, oops, not on the points. So even if you wanted to make all of that straight, it'll just straighten everything out. Oops. And if you hit Control K, it kind of tries to guess which edges you want it to do, but I don't want it to do any of them. So this is not doing very good with the edge on it. I'm just going to mark some of these edges and chop these bottom parts off. Perfect. Oops, already dropped. Yeah, I'm just going to mark the edge on here. Yeah, so in this one I'm just going to do this last three, and then right here, oops, unmark those. Right, that's pretty good. And this part's going to need some help too, so I'm going to do the top of it. Oops, and I missed a little edge right in between. Pull that out. There we go. Now there's another way to straighten the edge. So if you're editing your UVs manually and pulling points or whatever, and you want to pin a point so it doesn't change, you can hit P on them to add these green pins to them, and those two will stay the same. Also, there's the S tool, which adds purple pins. It's a snap tool. It's useful for if there's a bunch of same parts on your object that you've unwrapped that have the same UVs when they're unwrapped, and you want to stack them on top of each other. That's what the S tool is for. It's the snap and stack tool. I'll get rid of those too. So you can mark a bunch of points on a bunch of different shells that have the same topology, and then you can either make them stack on top of each other with the exact same UVs, or you can gather them together, or there's a few different options here. But I'll show you the other way of straightening edges. If you hit S on two outside border edges that you want to have the border straight between them, I just hit S and S, and then on any point between them you double tap S, and it'll pin and straighten between the 2 points. And then even you can control middle click and drag the points around, and it'll keep its ratios. So you could yeah, just flatten it from those, and it'll try and do its best. But I'm going to take those off by hitting Shift S, and then Shift P will unpin them. And I'm just going to use the I tool on those ones again as well. Oops, Control. You serious? There we go. Straighten. Oh, I guess backspace also untags edges. Instead of hitting Shift I or whatever, you can use backspace and it'll actually do it properly. So that one's pretty good. Make that efficient. Your control arrow keys helps for lining everything up. Snip the corners so that one goes nice. Sweet. Just lining everything up. So when I go to pack this, it'll go in a nice pack. Looks pretty good. Oh, that's that little aimer thing. And I'm just going to straighten out everything quick. There we go. Okay, so I'll do a pack quick, and yeah. So I got a 56. If I rotate these, I'll probably get better. Oh yeah, 68. It's actually a pretty good pack. If I go to best quality, it might get a little bit better. But then again, like, you're starting to get hard to paint stuff. That's why when you're packing, it's good to put on a bleed, so your stuff's not touching each other. So yeah, I'm going to turn up my bleed to about 4. Maybe 3. It just seems like there's a bunch of area right here I can just stuff all my little bits into. It'll make it easier for painting. I'm 69.4. Yeah. So I'm going to show you this snap and stack tools right now, and then yeah, and then just a render thing, and that's about all the stuff that I ever use in this UVLayout program. So let's see, I got a bunch of these little, whoops, a bunch of these circles. And these snap and stack tools work on any objects that have the same topology. Those two will stack. Nope. Let's see what those are. Oh, what do those belong to? This is always fun. Whew. Okay, I'll just leave those off. So, the snap stack tool. So these two look like they belong to the same thing. What you want to do is mark the same border edge on your two objects that you want to stack on top of each other. Since these are round, you can't really tell which ones are the same border edge, but I don't think it matters that much for these ones. If you wanted to have your textures line up perfectly, or if it was like something that was repeating, you might need to rotate them after you start texturing them in your other program. But just for now, I'm going to do this. So you pick the same points on your border edge, and then you hit the S tool, and then you got to pick your original shell, and then it'll turn yellow. And now you can use these snap stack tools. So if you want to stack it on the first, you hit the first, and you'll see they get pinned to each other. Or if you have one that's bigger than one another, this will match the size of the first one. Even if, for example, I could probably even stack that one on top. Yeah, since it's the same topology, it'll snap and stack on top of one another. Or you could go to the average between all of them. You could do gather, so, whoa, that's kind of funny. Not sure why they're gathering those pieces. I thought you usually had to mark them before they would gather them. Okay. Well, I guess it gathers any things that have the same amount of points on the outside edge. Well, that thing didn't have the same amount of points, though. That's weird. Usually doesn't do that. Oh, I guess if you go to the stack UV, it only does your selected ones. Yeah, so usually you just go first and they're all good like that, and then if you lock them all. Yeah, the only problem with this snap stack tool is now if I go and redo another pack box, they won't stay stacked on top of one another. I don't know why they did that, but that's how it works. So you'll want to do your initial pack first, or your good pack first, and then do all your snap and stacking. But it does work pretty good once you do that. And so I'll just stack those ones, left click. And now since a different shell is highlighted yellow, it will just do those ones. So do that. Sure, that's good enough. And you can drag and select and move your objects around. And yeah. So it looks good enough to export. So I'm just going to save that off as casually UV'd, save. And then dismiss that. And then I want to render off oops, get out of here, pack. I want to render off a pattern for painting. So you can go pick your map size that you want to save off. Let's say I'll do a 2K. I'll click those two on because I like that. Actually, if you leave anti-aliasing lines off, it's easier to make your selections in Photoshop. Yeah, so it pops up with this this viewer. I'll bring it to the screen so you can see it, and it just shows you your UV layout. And if you want to keep it, you go File, Save As, and you select where you want to save it. Desktop layout TIFF. I guess that it saves it to your path automatically. And there it is. So I think that's all the features of UVLayout. Oh, there's one more thing that I missed that I hardly ever use. Back to UVLayout. So let's say I wanted to make this point perfectly level with this point. You hit the A button, it brings up an angle guide on your original point, and then when you control middle click, it automatically snaps within reason to that point to make it straight. I don't really see a need to use this anymore. They've added in those new straightening features over the lifetime of UVLayout, and those things work awesome now. So I don't really see the need of that. There might be a time when you want to use it. Like if I wanted to line up those 2 points for some reason. But like I said before, the straightening tools work really well. And yeah, so that's UVLayout. Yeah, it works great. I bought my own personal professional license for it for when I was working. It comes in a dongle format. It's like I think it was $150 when I bought it, or $100, something like that. It saved me tons of time. It's a great program, and I highly recommend it. So I guess I'll see you guys on another video.